Let's try a thought experiment. Imagine beings that are ideal readers in every way. Perfectly intelligent, with inside knowledge of human language and life, unlimited time, completely honest, impartial, incapable of error. Hand them a text and the rules of logic and ask, what is the single correct way for human beings to interpret this? My guess is they couldn't give you one, especially not the one right way to put the text into practice. What they'd say instead is something like, there are options here, and the text alone can't settle between them. About what the whole means, what the parts mean, the context, how far it applies, what the author was trying to say, and what he intended. They'd admit they can't resolve the text's internal tensions using nothing but the text. And they couldn't tell you what this finite body of words implies about important questions it never directly addresses. So even these perfect readers would end up in a kind of peaceful stalemate. Now, I don't know whether that's how it would actually go, but here's the point. The readers this text was written for are nothing like them. People can't correctly absorb everything they read, and we are rarely willing to admit it or even notice it. So, separating our assumptions and expectations, what seems right, what we want the text to say, from what's actually on the page, is genuinely hard. And because each of us needs one tidy picture of the whole, coherent enough to think with and act on, we bend the pieces that don't fit until they do. When we can't hold everything in our heads at once, we simplify exactly where we should have kept the details. And obsess over details exactly where that buries the point. And how do you sort all that out using nothing but the text itself? Nobody interprets in a vacuum either. You read while entangled in dependencies on the people you owe your position to, the people you're pinning your hopes on, the people who could take that position away. And that pressure, the payoffs you see and the risks you fear, your own self-interest, all of it seeps into what you conclude. Then, when you write your interpretation down, the same problem hits again. Your words don't quite fit. You're imprecise. You don't always fully know what you mean. Your terms are ambiguous. Your sentences don't quite hang together. And at some point, the explanation just ends. In fatigue, errors creep in, forgetting, filling gaps with things that were never there. And once it's out in the world, it takes on a life of its own. So by the time you'd want to correct it, you and the whole context may have changed so much that the correction comes too late and gets misread anyway. Or you've simply moved on. Then, someone else at another time, in a new situation, picks up the text, and the whole imperfect process starts over, on slightly different details, which may push the interpretations even further apart. But there's one more layer, and it's the darkest. Interpretation is also touched by our inclination toward evil. Think about it. We lock our doors. We teach our kids not to talk to strangers. We count our change. We build police forces, issue ID documents. So, why would we casually take someone's word for what a complicated text means, especially a text about how to live. Reading isn't done by some sealed-off mechanism inside a person, some tamper-proof meter that only displays honest results. It's done by the whole person. Ignorance born of laziness can wreck an interpretation more or less badly, depending on how much you needed to know to read that text responsibly. Pride and fear can keep a person plowing ahead, even lying after he's realized he got the meaning wrong. And weakness of will keeps us from consistently following what we know to be true and good. If the text is about the human heart, the reader's heart matters all the more. To justify a life that contradicts what an honest reading would demand, a person starts tailoring the text to fit himself. He hunts for loopholes and ambiguities, skips the uncomfortable parts, redefines the terms, tells himself stories, and after enough repetition he genuinely loses track of whether they are true, because he wants them to be. What gets cemented that way becomes almost impossible for him to tell apart from truth grasped with a pure heart. Which is why texts like this are best read by people of pure heart. Find them and listen to them, and if you can, do the reading yourself in that same state of heart. One last thing. People don't lie only out of weakness. They also lie on their own initiative, maliciously, knowingly, deliberately, systematically. So they lie to stand out, to get revenge, to turn people against each other, to get what they want. So at least parts of many interpretations of any text will carry the mark of this dark side of human nature, and maybe of something darker still. To deny that, you'd have to claim that interpretation is carried out by creatures other than human beings. And it isn't. It clearly isn't.